All right, good evening, everyone. I think we're all here and we're able to get started. So we are live there. So we'll call to order the City of Summerside. We have a planning board meeting, committee of the whole meeting this evening here of August 5th, 2025, here in downtown Summerside in our beautiful historic City Hall. Begin by calling to order the planning board meeting here at 5:02 p.m. I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented from a member of planning board. Councillor Trenholm, second. Councillor Doiron. All members of the planning board in favor of the agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, changes, revisions. Hearing none, will proceed as placed before you. We begin each one of our meetings here at the City of Summerside by acknowledging that the land upon which we're gathered is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Abogway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. At this point, I will hand over our planning board meeting to our planning board chair, Councillor Doiron. Councillor?
All right, thank you, Your Worship. We begin this evening with the official plan and zoning amendment application for 232 Simmons Avenue. The purpose of this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to amend the official plan's Schedule B future land use map to redesignate the subject parcels from agricultural to comprehensive development area. It is also proposing to amend the zoning bylaw Schedule A, the bylaw text, and Schedule B, the zoning map, for the purpose of rezoning the subject parcels from agricultural A zone to comprehensive development area CDA zone. Background: the application was received from PCHF Investments Inc. for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment that affects PID number 116945 and PID number 71340, cumulatively known as 232 Simmons Avenue. The purpose of this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to amend the existing agricultural land use and zoning to comprehensive development area district to create an overlay that designates two separate development areas, health and learning districts 1 and 2, and defines the permitted uses for each area. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw: when planning board reviews a zoning bylaw amendment, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Under section 8.4 of the Parks and Greenspace plan, the criteria of 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 must be considered. 1, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment: the process to adopt and develop this comprehensive development area aligns with the zoning bylaw. 2, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment: the proposed official plan amendment aligns with the official plan. This proposal supports a number of objectives and policies within the official plan, specifically section 3.4, to foster growth strategies that focus on making Summerside a sustainable community. It proposes to have a higher density development, and it contains a mix of land uses. From section 5.1.1, to promote all housing types in the city. From section 5.3, to encourage high density housing. And from section 5.8.1, where the policies and objectives speak more to housing and the types of appropriate institutional uses. The proposed rezoning supports the goal to provide adequate and cost-effective institutional facilities to serve community needs for education and training, culture, recreation, healthcare, public safety, and government. Taking account of how population changes will affect demands for certain services. The applicant has explained the medical center will include a health education and training center, housing for students, and will implement the patient care home model, which is the direction PEI Health is moving to provide better health care for the residents of PEI. To specifically address the concerns around the development of agricultural lands, the proposed development aligns with the objective of section 4.0 to achieve effective growth management through best planning practices, specifically the policy to protect agricultural lands from premature development, speculation, and other harmful urban impacts, with particular focus on agricultural lands on the city's periphery. It also supports the objective of section 5.11 to conserve agricultural lands. It is important to understand an urban municipality's role in protecting agricultural lands. It is not to prohibit the development of agricultural lands within our boundaries. An urban municipality annexes agricultural lands within their boundaries for long-term growth to ensure there are lands available as the municipality grows. Their role is to provide serviced, developable land, I can't get it, developable, there it is, land, okay, everybody gets one. In this way, an urban municipality protects the agricultural lands in the rural municipalities or unincorporated areas. An urban municipality must ensure development of agricultural lands is done sustainably, i.e. encouraging redevelopment of areas already built and with access to infrastructure, encouraging development of agricultural lands be higher at density, and prohibiting leapfrogging, which is when a development skips over vacant land directly adjacent to developed lands in favor of land further away. This proposed development is to support the hospital. To better serve it, the proposed development needed to be within the vicinity of it, which ruled out redevelopment of another lot. It is directly adjacent to the hospital, so it isn't leapfrogging, and the proposed residential uses are medium to high density. The amendments do not impact the Parks and Greenspace plan. 3, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, the 16 plus or minus acre site is suitable for development and will be required to be developed as per city bylaws and standards. The property is intended to be further subdivided with extension of city roads and servicing. 4, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, there are a variety of land uses surrounding the proposed development: agricultural, residential, parkland, institutional, and a special use zone that houses the substation. These uses are all generally compatible with the proposed development and specifically support the institutional use. 5, any comments from residents or other interested persons? Staff comment, a public meeting was held on July 21st, 2025. The public meeting notice was advertised in the July 5th edition of The Guardian. 12 letters were mailed to 13 property owners. 2 of the properties notified were owned by the applicant. The applicant, Derek Bond, president of PCHF Board, provided an overview of the development, the CDA plan, outlining the intended uses. Brian Poppett, 497 Sherbrooke Road, shared concerns and matters that he had raised at the public meeting, included the city is developing agricultural land. The concerns and matters raised at the public meeting have been addressed throughout this report. Number 6, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the city's water supply in the area is adequate for the new zoning and the sewage treatment plant can handle the additional loading. New water and sewer infrastructure will have to be installed to service this new zoned area at the developer's cost. Rezoning from agricultural lands to CDA does have an impact on the sewage loading of the Granville Street North lift station. This change in zoning relates to an increase in load of approximately 60 cubic meters of sewage a day. This represents approximately a 4.5% increase of sewage to the Granville Street North lift station, which translates to a $68,050 cost to the utility. All infrastructure is to be designed and installed to meet city standards. The existing streets are designed to a local city standard and will accommodate the additional traffic from the development. The development will have to extend the existing Simmons Avenue storm system to the new development to accommodate a storm system for the new development, as the Simmons Avenue system was designed to allow overland flow from the crest of the hill at the end of Simmons Street profile. This new development will have to provide a stub street near the north end of the new development, approximately 200 meters from Simmons Avenue to meet the street minimum street length, with a cul-de-sac of 220 meters. The Rotary Friendship Park is adjacent to the property. The park entrance is 250 meters from the subject parcel, and the Bluebell Park is located within 850 meters from the subject property. Parkland dedication is calculated upon subdivision of lands, which is not applicable in this application. 7, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, vehicle access from the development is intended to be McEwen Road via Simmons Avenue. The developer is proposing the extension of public streets to the abutting lands to the east. The proposed north-south street will create a T intersection where it meets Simmons Avenue. The intersection will be controlled with a stop sign on the proposed north-south street. The site is pedestrian accessible via the new proposed north-south street via Simmons Avenue and McEwen Road. Sidewalk is on the east side of McEwen Road. 8, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there are no environmental, scenic, nor heritage resources on this property. If the developer unearths an archaeological or paleontological resource, they are required to report it to the relevant minister per the Archaeology Act. 9, impacts on city finances and budgets, not applicable. 10, other matters as specified in this bylaw, not applicable. And 11, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the housing needs assessment estimated an additional 1,250 dwelling units would be required by 2036 to accommodate population growth. Though we are on track to meet and surpass this projection, the assessment was based on a lower population growth than Summerside has experienced over the last 5 years. As expected, Summerside's housing needs have increased. Staff review. City staff supports the proposed zoning amendments for the proposed Health and Learning District 1 and 2 for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for PID number 1169465 and PID number 71340, cumulatively known as 232 Simmons Avenue. As per section 5.10B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. And the planning board recommendation, the application received from PCHF Investments Inc. for PID number 1169465 and PID number 71340 to amend the city official plan and zoning bylaw creating the CDA zone, Health and Learning District 1 and 2, and council designate the development officer to review and approve developments with the CDA zone, Health and Learning District 1 and 2, be recommended to be approved by council. Moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder from planning board. Councillor Trenholm. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Trenholm.
Yeah, thank you. Just a short, I guess, question. I'm just curious, when we're on our when we're looking at using the housing needs assessment of 2021, I'm just curious why we're, I guess, putting that forward. I know we've had a 2023 Mayor's Task Force on attainable housing, and I'm just curious. There are two different figures in terms of how many dwelling units, so I'm just curious.
Explanation incoming.
Sorry, your question was why were we using the 2021 instead of 2023?
Yeah.
I missed that the numbers were different. That's the reason. Just a staff error.
Okay, sure. Yeah. And that's fine. Yeah, because there's two different. Yeah. So one's I guess 1250 dwelling units, and I think the other one's at 19,000. So that's just all. Yeah, two different reports. That's all. Okay, thanks. Yeah. 1900? Sorry, 1900. Yeah, I said 19,000, didn't I? Okay. That would definitely be. Yeah. Thanks for clarification. thanks for clarification. That.
All right, Your Worship.
Yeah,
Yes.
a real quick question. Has the applicant, when I'm looking at this, I just question for staff maybe instead of the applicant. Do you have any concerns with the traffic patterns in the area where Frank Mellish Street is privately owned? Certainly that will drive more and more people along that privately owned street, which is not built to city standards. And it's already used frequently for all sorts of thoroughfare.
I guess we're the ones that Linda's highlighted in blue. We're hoping the traffic will predominantly come on Simmons, and as you go further north in the blue, they're not making a connection through to Frank Mellish. They suggest that they may connect the parking lots perhaps, but we advise them to do so in a way that they'll not have people looping further through their private network. But
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we should be having a discussion with the province about Frank Mellish Street as a whole anyways. I sort of come up to this because, again, if you're putting in housing, you're putting in student housing, there's a pretty large building that they showed on their picture, right?
Theirs was a 4 to 5 story, and the top level was for, I'll say, residents.
Right, so people leaving that development, if that area is gonna continue to get developed, will naturally take Frank Mellish, or they'll take Walker, which is just a local road as well itself, although I think it's a 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, just wondering if we should be having a discussion with the provincial government about Frank Mellish itself and whether they should be building it to city standards and whether or not it should come into our road network. That's more of a question it's partly for you from a planning side, but also for council.
So furthermore, what you said, whenever the province, would they come in for a permit to do something, would that lay into whether a permit is approved or not?
Staff looked at saying the access on Simmons, but from there in Simmons, it directly stubs onto McEwen Road, which is, I'll say, one of our collector style. So, yes, this may generate some volume, but the closest point it's going to come through Simmons and then stub onto McEwen, which is a collector. Yes, they can go across, I guess, then to potentially Walker towards Granville Street, or yes, some may choose to go through the Frank Mellers, that they've tried to put some, I'll say, traffic calming measures of their own through, and a stop sign at the access to the emergency part, and then a four-way at they've done their own trials as far as they're trying to deter traffic from going through there. Because people tend to come up, sometimes even McEwen Road, and cut through there to go to the box stores, like, instead of turning left and going over to Walker, like they do that now, but. Yeah, it's.
Again, just general question from staff and planning expertise is whether or not we should be asking the province to consider Frank Mellish Street turned into
The portion.
whether we should bother reaching out to them and having a discussion about that, because.
It could be the portion, I don't know if I can borrow the cursor. Yeah. The portion, not all of Frank Mellers, but from that intersection, even from where Linda's pointing to now, down, I'll call it like a backward J, to Simmons, even that portion of it.
Yeah, that's the portion that people travel on.
Yeah. I just want to clarify, I think it's all called,
Yeah, you're right, yeah, sorry, I was just talking about the
Yeah.
connection point from McEwen
Yeah.
to Roy Boats. Yeah.
It's really the end of McEwen, yes, to Roy Boats out. I think that's the.
Yeah, this is a general question, whether there's value in reaching out to the province about that street. So if the planning department has any technical services, has any feedback on that, maybe not right now, but just going forward, it might be valuable to reach out to the provincial government. Just, again, that's where people travel, and they've got more people traveling through there. That's all. Otherwise, I just want to say that it's a package. The package is excellent, and the maps are great. So the map here on page 3 of 130 is awesome. Really helpful to be able to delineate what is what and where things are. Just great package. Thanks.
All right. With that, seeing no more comments, we'll ask planning board to, I think, sorry, I thought that was still on. Okay, sorry, Councillor Trenholm, please.
No, thank you. I just wanted to definitely support when the mayor is talking about Frank Mellish, just exploring whether for staff to explore that. It's definitely been on my radar and the radar of the community for a while to make that street more pedestrian friendly. If it could be more of a standard of a city street with pedestrian access, etc., that would be much appreciated, but see what we can do about it.
At the time of the development, the hospital, the staff at the day suggested that they do that differently, and they purposely chose, as far as a conscious decision, to make that road in that direction. And we advised that people were going to be cutting through. If they wanted to make a loop around, they should put the hospital further to the south and make that loop around. And so it wasn't a random act that they chose to build that we raised concerns of before any other development around there. So it was a conscious decision to build that road in that position and connect those two public streets. But not saying it's not warranted a discussion now. It wasn't a random thing that happened. And
so just for clarity, do you want, is there staff assigned to reach out on that, or is this a?
I think it's more first from just, it would be good to get staff feedback on whether or not, from a planning perspective, if there would be value in us collectively reaching out to the provincial government to have a discussion about Frank Mellish Street and whether or not it should be turned into a public street and meet our public street standards.
All right, moving forward with all members of planning board present, I believe this will go to council, if I'm not mistaken, in September. There's no regularly scheduled council meeting in August, so our next full council meeting will be September 15th, unless for some reason there's a special meeting before that, but I believe that's the next opportunity. So that's when we will make a decision on this. But for now, planning board, all members in favor of recommending to council, please say aye. Aye. That's unanimous, so that will go to council September 15th.
Can I ask if there's meetings, are we having committee meetings in the first week of September?
As far as I know, we are, yeah.
I know they had expressed, I know they started their meeting with their civil design team. They want to try and get their roads built because they can't start building their building until the roads are built and turned over to the city.
Yeah.
Or we'll be into some sort of challenge there that I can hear back from. I know when we tell them that, they may be looking forward to try to do something. I can follow up with them by the September meeting.
Absolutely.
If we have committee on the September 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah, it's scheduled for
Yeah.
the beginning of September
5
there.
o'clock on the 2nd, yeah. And I know they expressed sort of a desire to
They
hopefully
did
be
in-
open in 2027, I think it was.
And I know they met with some people that are on their board of Construction Mind that were trying to say if they could get, we'll know more. They hired their civil people. We'll know when they plan on having, if they're gonna be ready to go to design or tender. I'll get back to you, but.
So we'll say tentatively September 2nd, we'll be making this vote, and likely the next item on the agenda too, Mr. Rogerson's application for Pope Road,
I'm not
which is
sure their
next up.
timeline. I just know that we met with these people. They had mentioned they had trying to get their building started. They can't get their building started until the services get put in the road and.
Can I ask just one more quick question, Chair? Not to go to the vote, but just based on what Director McDonald said. Are they planning to build the new street? Is it going to be a pedestrian-friendly street? Just where maybe I just assumed where if it's a health CDA for learning that they would be putting in sidewalks and things because that.
They
from
did
the-
not indicate that to us. They were building it to our city standard and turn the street over. It was intended to be a public street that was go up there, not like Frank Miller's, and they were building it to our current standard, but we haven't seen the details from their design team.
They could build it to a standard that made it pedestrian-friendly. That
They
would be
could,
their
they
choice
could go
if they
beyond
wanted
if
to.
they wish, yeah. They were gonna make a connection for their users of this building directly over to the hospital. They were potentially gonna do a pedway as well to have,
Yeah, I
I'll
just
say the
assumed that,
interconnectivity.
yeah, I just assumed that if they were a health and Department of Health and Wellness, the hospital walkable community. Anyhow, just be curious to know, but
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, next item, 185 Pope Road, application for an official plan and zoning amendment, supporting explanation. Purpose of this official plan, sorry, am I doing it wrong?
did you just vote on that one?
We just voted, yeah, it was unanimous, planning board,
trying to
yeah,
make
we
notes
were
here.
just sort of up in the air on the date, but hopefully the second. The purpose of this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to amend official plans Schedule B, future land use map, to redesignate the subject parcels from industrial to comprehensive development area. It is also proposing to amend the zoning bylaw Schedule A, the bylaw text, and Schedule B, the zoning map, for the purpose of rezoning the subject parcels from light industrial M1 zone to comprehensive development area CDA zone. Background, an application was received from Harcourt Holdings, Inc. for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment that affects PID number 548610, known as 185 Pope Road. The purpose of this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to amend the existing industrial land use and zoning to comprehensive development area district, to create an overlay that designates a development area, a cluster residential district, and defines the permitted uses for the area. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, when planning board reviews a zoning bylaw amendment, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Under section 8.4 of the Parks and Greenspace Plan, the criteria of 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 must be considered. Number 1, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment, the process to adopt and develop this comprehensive development area has followed the zoning bylaw requirements. Number 2, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, the proposed official plan amendment aligns with the official plan. This proposal supports a number of objectives and policies within the official plan, namely under section 3.4, which aims to foster growth strategies that focus on making Summerside a sustainable community, as well as the policies to promote higher density development, mixed land uses, and promote a range of housing types. And under section 5.1.1, which aims to promote all housing types in the city, and to include zones to accommodate all housing types, as well as the policies to promoting residential densities and to maintain the CDA for promoting innovative responses to unique development opportunities. The industrial section of the official plan aims to support new industries with a focus on quality industries in their respective market segments, to develop quality industrial parks that have good transportation accessibility, and to minimize conflicts with other land uses. It does not speak specifically to how industrial uses interact with residential uses. Even though the official plan is silent on this matter, it cannot be assumed it supports it. Staff addresses compatibility and land use conflict below. Number 3, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, the 16 plus or minus acre site is suitable for development and will be required to be developed as per city bylaws and standards. The property is intended to be further subdivided with extension of city roads and servicing. Number 4, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, there are a variety of land uses surrounding the proposed development: agricultural, residential, parkland, institutional, and a special use zone that houses the substation. These uses are all generally compatible with the proposed development. The need to separate industrial and residential development from each other is one of the primary reasons for land use zoning. Not only does this separation limit the exposure of residents to the hazards and nuisance factors typically present in industrial developments, but it ensures industrial developments, a major economic driver for municipalities, are able to develop and expand without needing to take extra steps to protect the adjacent landowners. It is apparent by the development within and surrounding the Greenwood industrial area that it's in transition. There is significant residential encroachment. It's surrounded on all sides by low to medium density residential uses. This industrial area is also majority developed. The uses within it are light industrial in nature and include storage, shipping, auto body repair, and a construction laydown business. Other uses include a church, medical offices, and a fish mart, further indication that this industrial area is under transition. To date, staff have been made aware of complaints from the adjacent residential properties speaking against the nuisances produced by the storage of seaweed on the subject parcel. While allowing the rezoning of this parcel to a residential type use follows the direction this industrial area is taking, it's important to understand that council and staff will still receive complaints due to the conflicting nature of the uses. These types of complaints likely won't end until this area has finished transitioning. During this transition phase, mitigation of nuisance factors, ensuring pedestrian safety, and separating residential and industrial traffic are ways to minimize conflicts and complaints. Considerations include the location of a sidewalk to discourage pedestrians from crossing the industrial accesses, the traffic flow into and out of the proposed development in order to reduce the turning conflicts in and out of the development, screening from adjacent parcels. While not included in the proposed CDA zone, considerations may be made to require opaque screening. This will keep future residents from trespassing onto adjacent industrial lots from their rear yard and will block any potential unsightliness from their view. 5, any comments from residents or other interested persons? Staff comment, a public meeting was held on July 21st, 2025. The public meeting notice was advertised in the July 5th edition of The Guardian. 24 letters were mailed to 21 property owners. 2 of the properties notified were owned by the applicant. The applicant, Jamie Rogerson, representing Hardcore Holdings, Inc., provided an overview of the development, the CDA plan, outlining the intended uses. No one from the public spoke at the public meeting. No written comments were received regarding this development. 6, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking, and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the city's water supply and sewer treatment systems can handle the loading from this proposed CDA development. This development fronts Pope Road and Mill Crescent, a one-way access from Pope Road, the entrance to exit onto Mill Crescent. The proposed access locations meet the city standards. This access already exists along Pope Road, and a new access will need to be installed on the Mill Crescent with a culvert across the existing ditch system at the developer's cost. The development will have access to a city sidewalk on the south side of Pope Road. The development will be required to provide a drainage plan showing how the drainage will flow from the site and be directed to the city storm systems on Pope and Mill Crescent. Summerside Electric has identified there is inadequate space to provide overhead power lines on the currently proposed layout and given street building density. The developer must allocate space for underground power lines and ground-mounted transformers / URD boxes. It is believed this will require elimination or relocation of some structures to make room for electrical equipment. The developer is responsible to submit engineering plans for underground electrical servicing to Summerside Electric to review. All costs of underground electrical construction and design is at the developer's cost. Once plans are available, Summerside Electric will offer quotes. The Crescent Drive Park is located within 720 meters from the subject property. Parkland dedication is calculated upon subdivision of lands. This development will not be further subdivided. Thus, parkland dedication is not applicable in this application. 7, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, this development will add additional traffic flow to the existing Pope Road and Mill Crescent, but it should be split onto both streets with the access being one way from Pope Road to Mill Crescent. Both streets will be able to accommodate the additional traffic. Pope Road has an approximate vehicle per day of 8,000 to 9,000. While we do not have traffic count information on Mill Crescent, but we would expect it to be no greater than 500 to 600 vehicles per day. Both streets will be able to handle the additional flow. The site is pedestrian accessible via sidewalk on the south side of Pope Road. 8, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there are no environmental, scenic, nor heritage resources on this property. If the developer unearths an archaeological or paleontological resource, they are required to report it to the relevant minister per the Archaeology Act. 9, impacts on city finances and budgets, not applicable. 10, other matters as specified in this bylaw, not applicable. And 11, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the housing needs assessment completed in April of 2021, which we will now sort of amend to say the mayor's housing task force, stated a further 1,900 or so dwelling units would be needed over the next 15 years to meet expected population growth. We are on track to surpass this. However, the housing needs assessment was completed prior to Statistics Canada releasing their census. Summerside's population growth from 2016 to 2021 was 7%. The dwelling unit projection in the housing needs assessment was based on a 0.5% annual growth. Summerside will require more than 1,250 dwelling units to meet current and future housing needs, and this proposed development lends itself not only towards the need for dwelling units, but for the need of different types of dwellings. The Director of Economic Development also provides comments regarding the application for Council's consideration. See pages 9 and 10, and I will read that shortly. There are economic development implications for the City of Summerside. The comments from the Economic Development Department have been attached to this report. And I will read that before the staff review. It's just a couple pages down. The Economic Development Commentary on Employment Land Rezoning Request. Economic Development has been asked to provide input on a request to rezone existing employment lands for residential use. While these lands are somewhat isolated and may no longer represent the highest economic use due to surrounding development, we do not see significant harm in converting these specific parcels. However, any such decisions must be approached with greater strategic consideration. The position and context. Economic Development continues to advocate for the preservation of industrial lands as essential to long-term economic sustainability, job creation, and municipal revenue. While residential growth is critical, it cannot come at the continued expense of employment land, a trend that seems to go unheard. The Mayor's Task Force on Housing 2024 confirms that sufficient residential lands already exist to meet future demand, reducing the need for ad hoc rezonings, especially in established industrial zones. Although the report focuses on residential land supply, it reinforces the need for a parallel commitment to employment land, planning to maintain economic diversity and future growth capacity. Rezoning employment lands for housing may yield short-term benefits, but risks include loss of investor confidence, reduced space for future businesses, and incompatibility issues between residential and industrial uses. Key considerations include a vision for employment lands. A clear long-term strategy is needed to guide the use and protection of Summerside's limited employment lands. Preservation measures. Stronger safeguards must be in place to prevent the erosion of industrial zones. Zoning consistency. Rezoning should align with the original economic intent of industrial clusters. Impact on industrial tenants. Introducing residential uses may create conflicts with current or future industrial operations and challenges to future expansion. Non-conforming residential uses can restrict future industrial growth and undermine economic goals. Recommendation from Economic Development Department: if rezoning is approved, an equivalent industrial land bank should be established to offset the loss. And some long-term recommendations from the Economic Development Department. 1, employment land planning survey. Launch a comprehensive study to assess future employment land needs and align with shifts in logistics, labor, and real estate demand. 2, improved rezoning coordination. Enhance interdepartmental review processes to ensure thorough and timely input on rezoning requests. 3, land inventory. Develop a complete inventory of residential and employment lands, built and greenfield, to support balanced growth. And 4, resource allocation. Provide economic development with resources to replenish employment land stock as needed. And the conclusion: while some flexibility is warranted, continued rezoning of employment lands for residential use risks long-term economic health. A balanced, proactive planning approach is essential to ensure Summerside remains a resilient and diversified economy. So back up to the staff review. City staff supports the proposed amendments for the proposed cluster residential district for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for PID number 548610, known as 185 Pope Road. Amendments pages 7 and 8. As per section 5.10B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board decision, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. And the planning board recommendation: the application received from Harcourt Holdings, Inc. for PID number 548610 to amend the city official plan and zoning bylaw, creating the CDA plan, cluster residential district, and council designate the development officer to review and approve developments with the CDA zone cluster residential district, be recommended to be approved by council. That is moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder on the planning board, Councillor Adams. Are there any questions or comments, Councillor Adams?
Thank you.
And-
I guess, I don't know, I take the economic development considerations and recommendations. I don't like to say I take them lightly, but I think I take them pretty lightly, considering we have an empty eco park and an empty eco park building down the road. So, for what that's worth. I'm also wondering about, would the parking requirements for a development going in there, would that come into play now or when they put in plan? Like, would there be on-street parking if it's a one-way? Like, how would that?
Yeah, I guess the 2 pages after, or the pages right after the recommendation, there's it highlights there the cluster residential district, sorry.
Okay.
And there it outlines the definitions, the permitted uses, conditional uses. I'll give you a second. It's the pages right after the recommendation you just read there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the standards that it's to be built by, the servicing standards and the general standards. So in the general standards, it says 1 parking space be provided per dwelling unit. So when they go to provide a plan, they'll have to show us where they're going to fit 1 parking space per dwelling unit. And I want to clarify one minor thing that may help that is that in item number 3, we had an error there saying it was 10 acres. It's 6 acres, and it will not be a public street. It's going to be a private street. We made an error in copying that over, but he doesn't intend to subdivide this into individual parcels. It's 1 large parcel and a private street down the middle of it. was what he intended in his, so there'd be no further subdivision and
So what do we have as like an example of that?
a lot of some of the mobile home parks, and also some other developers have put in some, off of Pope Road, just up the road, they put in some private streets, and they went in maybe a 4 or 6 unit at-grade building, put 3 or 4 of them in, and they did not build to a city standard, they put in their own private road.
Okay.
They're responsible from Pope Road in, there's probably 5 or 6 of them along Pope Road, and
Yep.
one down off of Glover Shore.
Mhm.
And then they're responsible for maintaining, snow plowing, repairing in the future, and it's not built to a city standard, but it's,
Okay.
and they create their own parking areas off of that, but we still make them show us that there's gonna be one per unit dwelling unit.
Okay. And so then, does emergency services come into play, like with,
They do, even if it's private, it does come into play as far as how far they are, that there's room for an emergency vehicle. If they go in so far, they have to provide a turnaround space to fit an emergency vehicle or a fire.
but this is gonna be an in and then an out, so. that
Yes,
shouldn't
but they review those, whether if it's private or not, they still review that criteria when they're doing,
be- okay.
I'll say, the submission for more detail, yeah.
And that would be the same as the garbage trucks and that
Yeah.
type of thing, okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. There was a gentleman here at the last meeting that had to leave because sick and didn't know whether we were going to be here tonight or not, and he called me. I had a couple of calls on it. But the big concern is the amount of vehicles that will be allowed, not only be allowed, that will be in that area. Their concern was, what are they gonna do for snow removal? But the big concern is garbage pickup. Now, we were told that if it's private property, they don't go on and pick up garbage. So can we get that clarified, how that's, and I know this is just the rezoning, but those are issues that need to be addressed.
I know the applicant stated when he was asked about the garbage last time that there'd be like an area on the south
A corral or
east
something.
sort of corral, which sort of, to your point, if you're living on the northernmost
Yeah.
spot, that's quite a walk
Yeah.
on garbage day
Because-
between Pope
Right.
Road and Mill to
Yeah,
take a
because
car.
we're dealing with an issue now that's private property and they're having problems with pickup, so. That's one issue he brought up, and the other one was the amount of, we all know we need housing, but the amount of homes and the width of the street and the amount of cars that are allowed there, not only allowed, but how many will be there. And for snow removal, that's all gonna be private, I guess, but anyway. And like as Councillor Adams was saying, the emergency vehicles, how, is that all gonna be taken into account? Or it is, we rezone it and then take it into account?
The emergency part is reviewed. There's probably a few that have gone back, that developers have had to go back and adjust their plans, that staff have highlighted areas when they get the actual development plan in and say,
Okay,
they're reviewing, I don't know what the actual code number is, but I know there's a fire standard that they have to
Yeah.
have a certain distance in, and they've made the developers create a T turnaround to be able to have it provide for, I just know a couple of them that they came up because they weren't 100% to satisfaction when they went to review it, and they had to adjust them. It's the only reason I knew it was an issue and that we reviewed, so.
okay. So this has been reviewed, this subdivision?
It'll only when we get, this is what he's proposing as far as a CDA, when they actually come in to develop. Is he gonna go with, I don't know if there's, how many units in this building until he actually comes in with the actual plan to say, this is how many I'm gonna be in more detail, here's what the length of the street is. At that time, we'll review it and say, okay, here's your width of your street, what distance do you have for a staff review as far as the, emergency services that they do on every development, whether it's a CDA or.
Okay, thank you.
So what they proposed in there was, that was their sketch, was parking on both sides of the street and one-way traffic down through it. Yeah. Yeah, there was one other comment, I think in the report it mentions the sidewalk on the south side. of South Drive. It's an AT trail, there's a sidewalk on the north side, but pedestrians will still be need to use the AT to get to an intersection if they want to cross over to the sidewalk and walk on the sidewalk. Just a couple of points in there, it was noted that it was a sidewalk on the south side.
Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, sorry.
I just have a couple quick questions. Did the applicant explore rezoning this parcel to R4 or R3 or something else?
They did look at that, but you can't have multiple units on the same parcel in the R3 zone, not multiple single detached dwellings. Our bylaw doesn't allow that.
So is that what's innovative about the application? That's what the CDA is for, right, for innovative developments?
Yeah, for getting this type of cluster housing.
One owner, multiple buildings. It's not being further subdivided. Sorry, it's not being further subdivided into small lots with a city street. There's
Yeah,
One
we
of-
have, and as I think you mentioned, we have mobile home
Yeah.
parks that do effectively the same type of thing.
Yeah, and I think the square footage and stuff that he's saying as far as smaller, I mean, I think he talked, I think
Yeah.
600 or 700 square feet and,
Yeah, the size and the
Yeah.
green space, I noticed when, like, when you go to any one of the mobile home parks in the city, there is room around the living units. These are all,
I don't think he wanted to use the phrase tiny homes to not be misinterpreted. He just said small square footage that we currently don't have, that, you know, that's what his
yeah, tiny
terminology
homes is
was.
fine, there's nothing wrong with that. Tiny home, I guess some of
That was
my-
his terminology, yeah. that
Okay,
was his-
all right. There's some of my concerns. One is I wonder, I sometimes feel with the CDA, at least with the CDA, that maybe there's not enough information. I know there's some of the preliminary stuff here, but we just had another CDA we looked at, and they presented not only where the buildings would be located, but they took us through the floor plan of what the building was, and I don't think we got any of that when this application came through. I also don't, and again, I go back to the word innovative, I'm all for variety of forms of housing, I think everybody knows that. But nothing here jumps out to me as being innovative. This, to me, looks like trying to fit in as many small units as possible into one parcel. With like, you're looking at, I can't see what the buffering is between the different units, but having visited other similar concepts elsewhere, I've never seen this type of clustering of these type of single units. There usually is some kind of green space or shared space or even individual green space for people to enjoy. So anyway, again, I don't see it as overly innovative right in front of me. So I struggle with the CDA piece of it. The other, I guess, concern, I think it's raised in the staff report, is the buffering where the surrounding land is institutional. There's a map up higher there, yeah, like it is basically splitting institutionally zoned parcels and lands with what effectively, industrial parcels, what is effectively a residential parcel. And I just thank staff for noting the potential future concerns, and there's obviously planning considerations there about whether or not that's a good, whether that's best practices in terms of zoning. I guess I would probably be more comfortable if it was abutting the R4 on either side, as opposed to splitting right through the middle. I take note of the economic development comments. I also take note of Councillor Haddon's comments. And that area certainly is changing, but there's a lot of value in having, whether or not it's industrial or commercial properties in our city to generate wealth. I don't think I have any other questions. As I said, for me at least, I don't see this as being an innovative project, at least at this stage. Not to say that I couldn't see a similar project being innovative, but at the same time, as I think it's noted here as well, the city is on track and exceeding our targets in terms of our housing targets. And we have done that by being innovative, and we just rewrote an entire zoning, we just passed a whole new zoning bylaw. And we didn't include this in the residential component, so I guess I'm just struggling with whether or not it, well, those are my comments. I'm not sure yet how I will proceed.
So, like, the innovative part, I know what you're saying, but to me, the innovative part would be what's being built on it too, right? Like, this part might not seem too innovative, but I would hope that maybe like the actual build concept would be maybe more innovative than just a regular, like, you know, whether it be, you know, more green or, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Council. And I just think, yeah, getting to the point, like in terms of presenting this to council as an innovative land use, like it's valuable for, or at least me, you know, I'll speak on behalf of all of council, but to see more information at the front end as opposed to here it is sketched out, as opposed to it looking, I kind of have a higher threshold for, maybe that's unfair to put a higher standard for an application for a CDA, but a CDA is to facilitate innovative developments for realizing the best use of, or mix of compatible uses of particular sites, that's all, I guess. And we've seen a few here recently and with varying degrees of innovation and presentation, but point taken for sure.
All right, so just to sort of recap, the planning board recommendation was moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Adams, and again, this will go to full council for a decision. Decision not being made tonight. Members of planning board in favor of recommending to council, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. So that will go to council with planning board's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Doiron. With that, we'll adjourn our planning board meeting here of August 5th, 2025 at 5:54 p.m. We'll move into our committee of the whole meeting. I'll be beginning by calling to order the committee of the whole meeting here at the City of Summerside for August 5th, 2025 at 5:54 p.m. Call for a mover and a seconder from council with respect to the agenda. Moved by Councillor MacDougall, second Councillor Cameron. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any changes, adjustments, revisions? Councillor Trenholm?
If we could just add the Seniors Engagement and Equity Directive, please.
Noted. Councillor Trenholm just points out that we missed the inclusion of the Seniors Equity something directive. So we'll call it the Seniors Committee. So we'll place that in under 4, so it'll be coming under after I. So it'll be coming as 4J, if that's all right with council. That's the amendment is just to add the Seniors Committee. All in favor of the amended agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Any changes, further changes, revisions? Hearing none, we will proceed. Move on to conflict of interest declaration. Any member of council has the opportunity to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item before them on the agenda. Seeing and hearing none. And just as a quick note, I think I missed that in the planning board, but just as a quick note to council, you don't need to wait for me to call for a conflict of interest. If you have a conflict of interest and I happen to miss one item here, you still have a duty, as I would, to say I have a conflict of interest. And my apologies. We'll move on to committee reports and recommendations. We'll start with Finance Committee. Councillor MacDougall.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have a couple of things that the committee's been working on. The debt management policy, it's a draft for the general tax fund, has been prepared and was reviewed at the June meeting. Suggestions are being incorporated for further discussion at the next Finance Committee meeting, scheduled for August. A separate debt management policy is being prepared for the utilities and will be presented at the August meeting. To the service level review, a presentation held earlier this evening outlined the process, and we'll be proceeding with this review and looking to the schedule for fall of 2025. No. What? What's that?
Was it this evening?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just omit this evening.
Thanks, Councillor. And now call on Councillor McColeman, Chair of Bylaw and Governance Committee. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. As Chair of the Bylaw and Governance Committee, report on the month of July, it was very busy with staff conducting a significant amount of follow-up work on two key files. Number one being the fulsome review of the city's existing bylaws with the CAO and internal, external legal. The review of the city's bylaws is a substantial undertaking, however, progress continues. There is an anticipated update on this project scheduled for our September meeting. And then item number two, the new policy analyst in collaboration with internal legal and the CAO have commenced a full review of all city policies with the ultimate goal of ensuring that our policies align with our goals, that they are modernized both in format and content, and that unnecessary policies are rescinded or joined with other similar policies for simplicity. And an update on this work is also scheduled for September meeting, and this concludes the report on the work being conducted by the Bylaw Governance Committee, and our meeting will take place in August for the members just to meet. There are some things that are coming forward. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Councillor McColeman. Councillor Doiron, Chair of Planning Committee. Councillor.
Yeah, so our planning committee is currently focused on, I would say, three key initiatives. Our complete streets, ongoing policy work, parkland dedication policy review, and the development of a crosswalk policy. Both the complete streets and parkland dedication policy projects are progressing well. We hope to have recommendations, or at least some very specific information to present to council, hopefully October, November, maybe even December, just depending on how things play out here over the next few weeks. Pending some brief consultations that we're doing with developers, and also the organization Resourceability, which they represent folks that may have disabilities that are infrastructure might further restrict. Just so we want to make sure that if we're talking about a policy that has sidewalks, we want to make sure that the right sidewalks and for everyone. So we're going to wait on feedback from developers and from Resourceability. And as far as the crosswalk policy goes, it should be noted that the city doesn't currently have an actual adopted crosswalk policy. Staff have been referring to, I guess, a draft from 2011 to sort of use as a guideline. So with several new crosswalk locations under consideration, the committee sort of agreed that it's not practical for staff to start determining these one-off crosswalk locations without a clear guiding policy actually adopted by council. So work is underway now to develop and sort of formalize that policy, and then we'll bring that to council.
Thank you, Councillor Doiron. These are really helpful updates. I haven't been at these meetings, so it's great to know where everything's ticking along. Councillor Adams, Action Plan for Safer Communities.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have too much to report. Last meeting, we noted who our public members were that were going to be sitting on the committee. For this report would mainly be noting that the crime prevention needs assessment that was done is going to be presented virtually to council at the September monthly meeting. And following that, there will be a public open house on October 15th. So there'll be lots of city socials and stuff on that, but there'll be more details to follow. But I believe Chris is going to be present for that one, right? Yeah, so he's virtually at our meeting in September, and then in person for the public open house in October. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Trenholm, Parks and Greenspace, man.
Sure, thanks, yep. So the survey is still online. The survey is going to be ending this month. We have so far 295, so 5 more to break the 300 mark. So if anybody's listening in the big World Wide Web, we just need 5 more to get 300, which is great. The core of what we're going to be focusing on in the committee is looking at the park's usage and looking at the future. So the more survey information we have, the better. And again, our RFP is to plan for the future. No date set yet. And if you do happen to have we have a special contest for if you're a baseball team or if you run a daycare, then the most people who participate or send a survey could get a free 1 hour at the Dome party at the end of the summer. So just a little incentive to get that input in. So that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cameron, do you want me to skip you? You want to do your thing?
No, I have something to
Yeah,
say.
oh
this
my gosh,
time.
sorry, I was going to be like, oh, I was going to give him a skip.
Well,
Okay,
not
Councillor
much.
Cameron, sorry
Not much
to
since it's
interrupt.
still summer.
Youth advisory.
But I do have info to send out to the school for when students are back in so that we can engage them right away and get something actually moving with this committee, since it's been month after month that I've had nothing to say because all the kids have been on vacation. So hopefully next month I'll have something a little bit more thrilling to add.
Thank you, Councillor. Downtown Transformation Team, Deputy Mayor Snow.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update. So, actually tomorrow we have a meeting planned to move it forward and progress to the next stage, which will include other member of councils in the implementation committee. That being said, I would like to note that there is a ton of transformative projects on the go and currently in the downtown, so that being the Mother's Antiques, which is in the final stages. 2 Arsenal Brothers projects, one at the former McDonald's downtown and Scotiabank. Both those projects have either one's on the end and one just started at the Scotiabank. Core Block project, the Spinnaker's Landing, how it has transformed over the last couple months. And then, of course, Shipyard Market and the transformation that has happened on that property. So there's a lot of good things happening currently in our downtown without council doing much in the implementation of the recommendations that have come forward from the committee. So looking forward to getting everybody together and implement some of the recommendations that we can and continue the progress we're seeing in the downtown.
Great, that's wonderful. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snow. Electric Utility Governance Review, Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. We actually had a get-together earlier today and continue to look for a best or better path forward. We're probably working on half a dozen different ways right now. It's quite interesting. The more information we dig up, though, sometimes the paths continue to spread out or change a little bit, so more meetings coming in the future, and eventually we'll probably get to a point where we can bring half a dozen recommendations to council, and they can make a decision on the best path forward.
Great, thank you, Councillor. And Smart City Initiatives, Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, not too much to report, other than our first official meeting is coming up soon, and again, next month, hopefully I have a little bit more to talk about. Great.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you, Councillor. Thanks all of council and city staff, not just for the reports but all the work that's happening here, moving our city forward in a variety of different ways, which is fantastic. At this point, I'd like to welcome up, we've got who do we have for zoning bylaw? We have Megan?
Your Worship, you forgot the amendment with.
Oh, I forgot the amendment. I wrote it
Trenholm.
down. I didn't write it down very clearly, obviously. I just wrote J. My apologies, Councillor Trenholm.
okay.
See, and because you do have something to say.
I do.
Yes, okay,
I do.
great.
I
Thank
do.
you, Councillor.
Yes, so
Councillor
that's the Seniors Engagement and Equity Directive, known as SEED. And so there's a prioritized action plan, basically 3 points. But we want to create it's going to advise council on gaps in the municipal policies, programs, and initiatives that impact seniors, identify and prioritize those key issues with a clear action and recommendations towards the senior population, and some of that may include recommendations for provincial or federal support or advocacy as so identified. So what's really exciting is that we're offering, and as part of this committee, we're having public appointments. So up to 5 people in the community can be appointed. So it's open right now, and it'll be ending on the August 31st at noon. So if anybody's listening, you can jump onto the social, or you can reach out to me, and I can provide you the link there. I think the key of developing, I guess, a document that's going to talk about actionable priorities for the senior population is involving the seniors in that discussion, and so I'm really looking forward to that. So again, just drop online, or you can email me, and we'll, if you're interested to be a part of that consultation, we'd love to have you. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Trenholm. At this point, now we'll move on to item 5, staff reports and recommendations. We have 2 here this evening. The first, we've got Megan Williams and Linda Stevenson presenting from Technical Services on zoning bylaw review. I'm not going to try and steal any of their thunder, so I'll just generally hand it over. I will ask Councillor Doiron if he has anything to queue it up, and then second, we'll follow a presentation on the Dunsky Generation Report. Both of these presentations to council tonight are information purposes only. It is not decision-making time here. It is simply to receive the reports, ask any immediate questions, but there will be opportunities again at council to follow up with further particular questions based on what you've heard here, or questions that may so arise after the presentations. Councillor Doiron?
Yeah, I guess, I have no specific intro other than briefly speaking with Megan before the meeting, and I think she has a very informative presentation we're about to hear. It's a lot of stuff, and I think she's done a great job of sort of condensing it into a meeting type format, and it's important that if any councillors have questions, to ask them, because we are going to be asked to vote on this within the next couple of months. So yeah, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. So just reintroducing myself again, I'm Megan, the planning officer for the City of Summerside. Today we're going to go through a slew of zoning bylaw housekeeping amendments. Where there's so many, I wanted to take the time to review them with you before bringing them forward for first reading. So this will be an opportunity for you to ask questions, provide comments and feedback, and then I'll do my best to answer those questions and to take your comments and feedback and integrate them into the proposed amendments when they do come before you. We're expecting to bring first reading back to council on September 15th. If there is anything presented today that you feel would be better if they were brought forward as an individual item, I can pull them from the housekeeping amendments and save them for later. You're not voting on the amendments today, and it won't be the last time that you can provide feedback and direction. You can send questions into Aaron over the next month, and then what we'll do is we'll put together the answers to share with council before the September 15th meeting. You should have, in addition to the agenda package, the red-lined version of the zoning bylaw. I think it might actually be blue-lined, so that's fun. This version is also available for the public to download off of Summerside's website on the Council Chambers webpage. The version is called Supplementary Documents for those who are interested in following along at home. The proposed amendments are a mixture of what was discussed during the Planning Committee meeting last year, as well as some staff recommendations. Okay, so to start, we're going to look at some topic-based amendments, and then we're going to go through the bylaw section by section. So what I've done to kind of help you guys follow along is that I've flagged the bylaw page numbers in the presentation, then I'll let you know what page we're on to kind of help you as we go along. Feel free to stop me at any point, just kind of wave and raise your hand at me. And you can ask any questions that you have, raise any concerns, or provide feedback. I will also stop at the end of each group topic and then the end of each slide to check in with you before we move on. So the first one is group homes. The proposed definitions are on page 33 of the zoning bylaw. So we've got non-market housing would be the umbrella term with the displayed 3 housing types under it. The intent being to keep the similar housing types together. The 3 housing types are proposed to be supportive housing, emergency shelter, and transitional housing. The proposed definitions remove the ethical and legal issues of people zoning by not referencing the mental, physical, or social needs that the residents may have. People zoning is a way to directly or indirectly regulate who lives in a neighborhood based on race, mental or physical health, gender, religion, etc. It can be really subtle, so it can be used. It used to be quite common for definitions of religious institutions to only include architectural components that you'd see like in a Christian or a Catholic church, which would effectively exclude other religious institutions from using that definition. Or it can be really obvious. In school, we were always shown caveats that were registered on properties in old neighborhoods in the States, and those caveats would explicitly prohibit the sale of the land to people of color or to Jewish people. So these caveats aren't followed anymore, obviously, but at one point they were, and the impacts of these caveats are still felt today. So an example of kind of people zoning that's related to group homes in particular would be the allowing or prohibiting the development on, for example, like an emergency shelter, and then saying that one is specifically for men or that one's specifically for women. We won't allow it in this space. So removing that kind of whether it's men or women from the emergency shelter as a whole removes that kind of people zoning component. We've spoken to the Provincial Housing Division and reviewed these definitions with them. The feedback they provided has been integrated into the definitions. They've got no concerns with these ones, and they feel that they'll evolve as the province start to implement their housing strategy. At this time, staff are proposing to keep these uses as restricted uses in the bylaw, so not putting them in any specific zones. And then the applications for these housing types will come before council for a decision. So our long-term plan for the new non-market housing types is to process a couple more applications as restricted use, and then staff would like to reopen the conversation with council to see if you'd be interested in expediting the permit process by establishing regulations and placing these housing types within land use zones. This will allow staff to process and issue decisions on the applications and then give surety to developers and residents alike. I'm hoping this way we can give council a bit more experience with them, and then you'll feel a bit more comfortable discussing potential regulations, what the impact of those regulations could be, and what the zone uses, what zones these uses could go into. Alternatively, where you guys have already gone through the application review process on a few of them, we can go straight to adding them to different zones with the regulations, if you prefer. So that ends the topic for group homes. Are there any questions, comments, concerns off the bat? Perfect. Next topic is childcare. So proposed definitions are on page 19. So planning committee asked staff to match the province's definitions. So these ones better align with the provincial legislation. So we're proposing to delete small, medium, large childcare facilities as the number of supervised children within those existing definitions conflicts with the provincial licensing. So these two new definitions, childcare center and then childcare center home-based, better align with the provinces. In addition to the new definitions, staff are proposing regulations to control home-based childcare centers, which are up on the screen now. So these ones are on page 72. These proposed regulations would fall under Section 8, additional use standards, and the intent will be to control where home-based childcare centers can be located. This is to minimize the impact to adjacent landowners and to assure the multi-dwelling unit buildings are constructed to a more modern building code and thus are built safer. So that's it for childcare. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I'm just reviewing, just the language, I guess, first. I think we're missing the word learning from the
definition?
Yeah, it says Early and Child Care Act. This Early Learning and Child Care Act. And I'm just looking at the number of children.
Yep.
Because I know child care is a concern in our city. And if we're taking it, let's, for example, go from R2 or R3, where it was a medium, which could have up to 15 children, right? Now they could have only a family-based, which is up to 8. So then all residential, the way it's worded now, would be all had have only up to 8 children, which includes their own. Because only a family home-based center is now going to be allowed discretionary based on the changes, as opposed to previously, where we could have what was called a medium, which would be up to 15 children.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking at the numbers and the fact that we do need childcare in the city, that where these changes are essentially reducing the amount of children that can be in a childcare center. And when we're looking at, I know that's, and when we're looking at increasing density in residential areas, this looks like it's contrary to that. It's reducing the capacity that the child care center could have in the residential area. So I'm curious what rationale is behind that.
So these definitions are pulled from the Early Child Care and Learning Act, or Early Learning and Child Care Act.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So when the province goes and they give out licensing for these, or like permits for these types of developments, their kind of home-based childcare center is up to 8. Anything else is considered just a childcare center.
Oh, sorry, yeah, oh, sorry, I'm not fully aware of that, but I mean, when it comes to our rezoning, so in our, I guess it's not, on this page it's not there, but it's within the other document, so if you look at what's discretionary under R3, like the previous was 8 to 15 children.
Yeah.
And yes, it fit under medium, but when we make these changes, it's only gonna be home-based, so that can be available. Previous, you could have a child care facility, but the changes mean you can only have home-based now.
Okay. I'll have to, yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I will look. I'll add it like in my addendum thing that I send out to council, like how this impacts the number of children that can be basically taken care of in each childcare center in each residential district. Is that what your concerns are?
Yeah. I'm just, again, looking at that, because I do know that if a center wanted to start and they could go through rezoning and have a different rezone, right?
Yeah.
But that discretionary, that's based on the R1 to R4, right?
Gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
as opposed to, it can't, yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question on that. So does the province, under the Early Learning and Child Care Act, restrict home-based childcare to 8?
Yes.
So if we couldn't, even if our zoning said that you could have 15, you still can't have 15. So it has to be consistent with the provincial regulations. So I think that's, okay.
Yeah, it's, like, in the end, we can keep the small, medium, large childcare. Just, it makes it a bit trickier when a person goes to get their permission from the province and the permission from us. It's just easier overall if they match. But if someone, say, like, if we had the medium childcare facility and they wanted to get it for 15 children, it was allowed in the R3 zone, they would just get a childcare center license from the province. Like, it's worked so far, it'll still work in the end if we don't make the change. This is just for better alignment. Awesome. Thank you very much. Anything else? Perfect. All right, schools. All right, so definitions are on page 37 and 38 of the zoning bylaw. So planning committee asked staff to add in different types of school premises and to consider how to handle private facilities such as the College of Piping and the diving school. So what we are proposing is to add the definitions for school post-secondary, to tweak the school premises definition, and to delete the college or university definition. So the way that the proposed amendments will work is that grade schools will be captured underneath the school definition. So that includes like private or public schools, so long as they're between like grade 1 to grade 12. School post-secondary will include technical, vocational, college or university, dance or music studio. It would include the College of Piping and the diving school in there. We are proposing to keep school truck driving, or to create the definition for it, because it is a specified use in a couple of our land use districts. The other amendment is to the school premises, and so that's just to kind of broaden it to include residential buildings, cafeteria, library. And this recommended change comes from a recent restricted use development application where the applicant asked to build residential units to accommodate the students' training in their facilities. So with this definition, applicants such as that one would be able to be reviewed and a decision issued by the development officer, so long as school premises is a permitted use in that zone. Or permitted or conditional use in that land use zone. Cool. So that's it for schools. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I do. You just referred to one.
Yep.
The one you just referred to that was, they made it very clear it was not a school.
Oh, no. Was it not a school? They, yeah.
Because they have no, when they present it, we ask them, like, because they have no, they're not affiliated with, like, the Education Act in any way as a school.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They didn't meet our definition of school in our bylaw, because our bylaw was, it said it was anything under the Education Act, which would not create any for training or post-secondary
Right.
of any sort.
Okay.
So that use was allowed in that zone, to have a training facility of some sort.
Right. To train them for the job, but they just weren't
Right.
allowed to do the school aspect of it.
So then with the proposed definitions, the technical aspect of it would fall underneath school post-secondary, which would include the school premises tied with it. Oh, okay. Okay.
You have to go back. It just
Yeah, yeah.
seems like it's sort of, because when they were here, they were very clear that they had no, no affiliation
Sure.
and with like having to have any permits or registration, like through the Department of Education registrar for private schools
Yep.
and so on, and training schools, so.
Okay.
I just wouldn't want you to go to all the work and do it and then be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
it's
whoops.
changed.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. I will check into that. Thank you. Super.
No, but I think we referred to it as a commercial school. Even though there's not any, there's still a training component to it.
So it would fall underneath, like vocational school, wouldn't it? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Super. Next one is manufactured home park. So this one, definitions are on page 32 and 28. So this one is a staff proposed amendment. Recently, a manufactured home park was expanded. However, rather than it being like a communal lot, the developer opted to subdivide each spot that a manufactured home was to be placed on. It doesn't quite fit under the R5 district, so the proposed changes that you'll see here are being suggested to better permit and control this kind of development. So the proposed amendments will differentiate between an unsubdivided lot and then a subdivided lot by adjusting the manufactured home space definition and adding a manufactured home lot definition. So the home space is for the unsubdivided lot, so like usually a leased lot, and then the manufactured home lot would be a subdivided piece of land. And then these ones are the proposed regulations to accompany that, and I do apologize, I missed putting in 20.5D. So those are on the screen right now, and I'll make sure I ship them out so that you guys have a copy of it too. So with those definition changes came some proposed changes to the regulations under the R5 land use zone, which should be on page 104 and 105. Generally speaking, the regulations will remain the same regardless if the manufactured home park features leased land or individual properties. But due to the wording in the bylaw, it does mean that there's some amendments are required to ensure both types of manufactured home parks are captured. So the proposed change at 20.5B means that the development standards, so that's the setbacks, lot area, frontage, will apply to both the non-subdivided and subdivided lots. 20.5C specifies that those regulations specifically apply to non-subdivided manufactured home spaces. 20.5D, these are new regulations that would apply to the subdivided manufactured home spaces. For clarity, there is an existing 20.5D, so that one will just get renumbered to 20.5E. We still good? Yeah, awesome. So that's the end of our specific topics. Now we're getting into the smorgasbord of everything else. Okay. So there's a handful of definitions proposed to be updated. The requested changes come from both staff and the planning committee. I'll go through them mostly alphabetically, starting on page 18 of the bylaw. So throughout the zoning bylaw, changes have been made to reference the provincial legislation. So for example, like the definition of the Building Code Act there, you can see. I'm not going to go through and identify every single one of them. I'll be confirming with our lawyer as well if it needs to be referenced every time it shows up in the bylaw or if it's sufficient if it's just in the definition. Clear days. So this one is a fun one, and it's better to kind of show you guys instead of trying to verbally explain it. So the proposed definition for clear days matches the federal definition. So you can see up on the screen, our current definition, no, that's not right at all. Oh, shoot, that's because it was, okay, so this is what the proposed definition will be. I apologize, it's because in the PowerPoint slide, I've got them like that flash up one after the other. So the current definition says that counts our days. Does it count the mail out date one? Yeah.
No, not the mail out date, we don't count that.
Okay, so it counts the mail out days would be the 19th, 22nd, 23rd, not the 24th or the 25th, because those are stats.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Or the 26th, because that's also a stash, not the weekends. And then it would count the 29th. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 days between the mail out and the event. So that's how our definition, like our bylaw currently defines it, which isn't how it's defined literally everywhere else. The true definition for clear days is after the mail out and before the event. So just changing that definition to follow what is legal and in the Federal Interpretation Act, so that it counts weekends and it does count holidays. Sorry, guys. Okay. And then the commercial residential building, just adding in that 50% of, we've received a couple of applications that have found loopholes in the current definition and have stretched the intent of commercial and or institutional uses. So for example, like having a laundry facility for the residential uses, or having a minimal, as minimal of an area as possible for the commercial uses. So like with putting the 50%, that's something that they have to achieve, they have to meet. Next two definitions. So page 26 has the next two definitions. Grade is taken from the Building Codes Act. Always better to align with legislation or documents higher in the statutory document or hierarchy to avoid conflicts. And then the proposed definition for hospital is just broadened. Perfect. All right. Page 38. We don't have a definition for seasonal structure, which is why we are proposing to put this in. So it's for buildings that would come up, like a garden, seasonal greenhouses that you see at Kent or Canadian Tire. We are expanding the definition for shopping center to kind of better suit what we have here in Summerside, including the different types of uses that we see in our shopping centers. The lot width definition and street frontage definition are on pages 30, 31, and 40. So this is to clarify the difference between what frontage and what width are. We get quite a bit of pushback on the interpretation of lot frontage. So we're hoping that by using more common language, the confusion will resolve itself. The definitions for flag lot and cul-de-sac are already existing elsewhere in the bylaw. They've just been pulled up because they fit better underneath the lot width definition. Yes.
I just have a question about seasonal structures. With the definition of seasonal structures, is it possible to be a little bit more clear about what a seasonal structure is? Because I think there's some things that people put up and they think that they are okay to be up all year, even though they could be considered seasonal, and maybe they are only supposed to be seasonal, but they do use them all year round.
Okay.
So a bit more like clarification or what a seasonal structure would be would probably be.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, more specifically, people put up like those little garages that I would consider are probably seasonal. They just pop up like a little tent, but they use them all year. I don't know if that is seasonal or not, but I think like a definition around those things would be a bit better just for clarity. Maybe that's just me that wants that clarity. But.
Sure. So it's like, did we put in something for temporary?
Yeah, just the other point on that one as well, like, it says erected for less than 120 days at a time.
Yeah.
I think to Councillor Cameron's point, some people put those up to cover their cars in the snow, and some people cover their cars in the sun. If they took it down for a day after, on the 121st clear day, and put it back up 122nd, I just maybe to clarify, that I think you mean 120 days a year, my guess is, or I don't, that's all.
I think the other thing is what people determine is to be a seasonal structure. Like, you know, some people put up a greenhouse, but it never comes down. Or again, it's more permanent. So even those, I'll say those shelters that are put up, people use them year round. So I don't consider those to be a seasonal structure. They may sell them in the summer or the winter or what have you, but they remain. So basically when we're talking about seasonal structure, we are specifically saying the ones that are put up for 120-day period, so typical. And they don't even do that as much. Like Superstore used to have the tent up all the time. They've kind of built a piece on now, and Canadian Tire's been the same way. They've gotten away from those separate structures, but that's what the intent was.
So I'll just add. Okay. Awesome. All right. So now we're going into the very exciting part of the regulations of the bylaw. So please turn to page 51. So under the MGA, section 134, councils may authorize a person to revise bylaws under certain circumstances. This authority must be granted through a bylaw. So staff are requesting permission to perform clerical, grammatical, and typographical corrections and to provide clarity to the bylaw without having to go through the bylaw amendment process. So some examples of the revisions that would have been captured that we're having to put through right now with council. So renumbering sections if they've been numbered incorrectly, correcting misspellings, i.e. changing assess to access, adding figures to text such as definitions so long as it provides clarity, and then clarifying maps. So those will be the types of revisions that would be coming forward, like that we're asking that council grant us permission to do. Council will still be notified of any of these revisions conducted under this section. How that looks can be determined later. So for example, we could just put like a quarterly update together for council, or council could be notified for every revision. It's kind of whatever floats your boat. To further clarify, the majority of the changes that we are bringing forward today would not fall underneath this section. There's just a couple of like nitty gritty ones, like the misspelling and the renumbering, that we would be able to just do. That one's a big one. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. You can, if something comes up later, you are still send a message to Aaron and we'll put something together for you guys. So this one is on page 50. So this is just to increase the circulation distance to match the others throughout the bylaw. Section 6.7C overlaps pages 57 and 58. It speaks to non-complying buildings, which are buildings that don't comply with the current zoning bylaw, but may have gotten a permit under a prior bylaw. One of the subsections speaks to extensions to these buildings. That section that we have up there that's deleted is confusing. So we're just recommending deleting it. And then to use the existing section 7 on page 59, which speaks to variances, to direct staff to be more explicit, that this section is to apply to variances of non-complying buildings. So we're recommending to add that to the list of major variances. So because it's a major variance, it'll go to council for decision. In addition to the variance amendments, we're asking to amend the types of applications that can have a lot area, depth, and width standards varied. Currently, it's only for minor subdivisions. However, there are some instances where allowing a minor variance, so anything 10% or less, to these standards for major subdivisions would also meet the justifications that are listed underneath subsection 7.2. Stumbled through that one. How's everybody doing? Perfect. All right, subsection 8.4 is on page 61. This one speaks to accessory buildings. So the first proposed amendment, just for clarification purposes, there was a request from Planning Committee to add CCANs as a permitted accessory building in residential zones. If that is the direction that council wishes to go, I do strongly recommend we include regulations that control setbacks, where they can be placed, and ventilation requirements. CCANs have been part of a couple of incidences where they've exploded, and at least one firefighter has been killed and another injured in BC. So due to the construction of CCANs, when they fail, they kind of fail catastrophically. The existing vents that they have on them aren't really large enough for sufficient airflow, so they can't effectively cool or vent the inside of the CCAN as they get hot. So this issue only really arises, like the explosion, when there's hazardous materials that are being stored inside the CCAN, with a very special note that hazardous materials would include like a lawnmower that has fuel in it. So, yeah.
So, do we have, for any other accessory buildings, do we have like requirements, like any other sheds or anything that people are storing the same things in as a CCAN, but it's just not a CCAN?
No, not that I'm aware.
No, they're completely different construction too, right? So like when you're building like a shed, it kind of has gaps and holes and stuff in it. So like when it fails, it just falls down. It doesn't blow up. Like the CCAN is built to be airtight while it's out on the ocean, right? Yeah. So what happens is that the inside of it heats up so much that it can melt like the canister, the plastic or whatever that like the fuel is sitting inside of. The gas will expand, and there's not enough space for it to kind of release through the vents. And so the CCAN, because there's nothing else for it to do, it'll just, right?
I'm just asking because I know we'll probably get some questions from people who like have a shed versus a CCAN, or CCAN versus a shed. So I was just wondering if there was. I don't have a shed, so I was wondering if there's any requirements.
I mean, there's still setback requirements and like lot area that they can cover. It depends on land use zone by land use zone. But it's like like sheds are very different from CCANs in my opinion.
I think I heard you right, but did you reference that it was requested by council to include CCANs?
Oh, did I lie to you guys?
Just my recollection is that it was actually, I brought it forward whether or not CCANs should be allowed as an accessory building permitted on lots, as some complaints had started to come forward regarding them, and so I guess just to clarify whether or not, I guess I want to clarify that I don't recall council asking for it to be included.
That was my understanding too. I was questioning that.
I think it was asked by council for staff to address the use of secans, not include them as a use, but
Okay,
address them
So
as part of the zoning bylaw.
Right.
We actually, staff, so we did have some were placed. We treated them like an accessory building when they came in. We had some concerns that we took it to I'll say the standing planning committee, and we discussed it and said that the consensus there wasn't an issue. We were looking at saying you just couldn't have them. We were looking at adding that language, and my recollection is the planning standing committee said, put them in and we'll let council decide it, whether they want to allow them or not.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if that does come for discussion for council, that would be open to the public to hear from residents as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be advertised in the paper, like when we bring it forward for first reading, that'll also be, the day for the public meeting, it'll just be advertised in the paper that there's a whole bunch of amendments, and we'll direct people to come to the website to look at what's proposed. The problem with having so many housekeeping amendments, which is why I recommend if there's something that you feel needs a little bit more attention to just pull it out, is that it may get missed because there's so much stuff in it. So if the CCAN and the accessory building piece is something that council would feel more comfortable discussing later, let me know and I can pull it out real easy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be helpful to pull the CCAN one out and we can have that discussion as to whether they should be permitted or not permitted. And I think this is the first time I've heard it. I don't know if rest of council, any concerns with the explosiveness of CCAN. So if we can, I think that seems to be the consensus from council here, is to just pull the CCANs one out and deal with it separately. Councillor McColeman?
But I guess I'm just also noting there that it has shipping containers. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I know some people have called where they've been in close proximity to their home, some in Corey or Ward. And the comment was, were residents asked, so I'm just wondering if we're doing this as a change or whatnot, if there is a meeting, at least that gives people a chance to have a say.
Yes.
Because I think it's hard for us when people say we weren't even asked.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Good.
Yeah, so what I'll do then is I'll take the CCAN piece out and we can deal with it at a later time. And we'll kind of make sure like it's kind of like known to the public so that they know it is a topic that's coming up.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
It appears to me that shipping container or CCAN would fit better in that 120 days or less. Just in my opinion, instead of a long term. But anyway, I just want to add that.
Perfect. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so going back on page 63 is subsection 8.9, which covers grouped main buildings. The proposed amendment will allow for more than one commercial/residential building on one lot. It will also clarify the minimum setback distances, directing the applicant to the building code and building bylaw. Section 8.14 is an example of one of those kind of clerical changes that if council approves the kind of technical amendment that we requested, we'd be able to kind of do on our own. So it's just changing seasonal building with seasonal structure to accompany the new definition, which I will look at clarifying also. Page 67 has subsection 8.17E. We're recommending to delete it as it's been moved to the definition section. So it's moot to have it in this spot also. And then page 68 has subsection 8.23, which is the commercial residential buildings. So due to the breadth of uses permitted in the commercial district, staff are recommending a caveat that commercial uses cannot create nuisance factors for the residents living in the same building, like an auto body shop. So it's just a way to protect the residential nature of the commercial slash residential building.
Question on that, nuisance factors, that would be like, it also smells and aromas, would that affect like a coffee shop in a residential building, like a Samuel's example or something like that?
Nuisance factors, it tends to be like malodorous, if I'm saying that incorrectly, but like bad smells.
Yeah, it's somewhat subjective. I think that,
Fair.
yeah, I think the case law and the smell stuff is around the sriracha, if I somehow remember the sriracha factory, but I just know sometimes it does come up with, that's fine, I just wanted to
Yeah.
note that,
That what we consider a nuisance, other people may not. Okay.
yeah, especially, it most comes up for restaurants or cafes and that
Yeah.
type of thing in a residential space.
Okay, I will look at
But-
that then, thank you. Perfect. Okie dokie, so page 70, accessory dwelling units. So 8.24B speaks to garden suites, where there's mini homes in the R3 district, and the definition for a single detached dwelling doesn't explicitly include a mini home. We're suggesting adding it as a use that garden suites can be accessory to. As accessory buildings have site restrictions that conflict with the size garden suites are permitted to be, staff are also recommending some amendments to clarify that a garden suite with an accessory use may be built larger than a standalone accessory building is permitted to be. So to clarify that, for example, if a detached garage is converted or built with a suite on top of it, then the size standards outlined in the garden suite section would apply. So that just means it can be bigger. Yeah. So that just means that the accessory, the garden suite can be bigger than the garage can be bigger than what's currently permitted. We're also recommending that we explicitly prohibit converting non-complying accessory buildings, so ones that are like too close to the property line or too close to the main building, be converted into garden suites until that building has been brought into compliance. And we noticed that front yard setbacks weren't accounted for in this section, so we're just recommending that get added as well. Questions, comments, concerns? It's a suggestion. If council's doesn't have interest in it, we can take it out. But it's, so if there's a property with a mini home on it, and it's not like in a leased mobile home park, we've got a couple of existing mini homes within town that are on, like, I'll call it like their own property. This change would allow them to have a garden suite on their property if there's space for it. It'll allow them to have a garden suite on their property if there's space for it.
So basically, their property would be treated like any other property within the city?
Yes.
Just that it's a mini home instead of a...
Exactly.
There may be 5 or 6 properties in Cary, they'd be in your ward.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, perfect. Okay. This one is a bit of a gamut. So page 72, the proposed amendment under subsection 9.2, home-based business, is meant to diversify where home-based businesses can go. So this could help with the housing affordability, with meeting gaps in services or commercial uses throughout Summerside. So we're just adding, instead of it just being in a single detached dwelling, we're suggesting a semi-detached or a townhouse dwelling. Following that is tourism establishments, specifically vacation rental property. So we're prohibiting the use, no, I lied to you. We are allowing the use in the listed zones with the caveat that they only be permitted within single detached, semi-detached, or a townhouse. So the intent is to kind of control like what would usually be rental properties, so like the row house or an apartment building, from those getting converted into vacation rental properties. Page 75 for 9.6. Staff is recommending to change the terminology from permit to approval to align with the rest of the section and to be a bit more accurate as to what's being granted. Page 77, subsection 10.2, proposed to explicitly state perpendicular parking is prohibited. It is current practice. And then, of course, adding in easement because that word was missed. Another technical amendment that we could have taken care of.
When we say perpendicular parking, is that like angle parking? What do you, perpendicular?
Give an example. An example would be the library. So where it has perpendicular parking to the street, so 90 degrees to the street, so that we don't have all that traffic backing right out onto the street, and which can create a safety issue for pedestrians or whatever.
So we're saying we are going to permit that?
No, hard pass. Prohibiting it.
Yeah, so currently it's at library, so we asked this one out.
We wouldn't be allowed at the library.
Would they have to eliminate the park?
No, I feel like it would be non-conforming.
Pardon?
Wouldn't it just be non-conforming? Like
Well,
it'd be
yeah,
allowed
I
to-
mean, it can remain to exist, but we're trying to eliminate those issues that it's a long way for,
Yeah, like
what's
we-
there is there, but basically going forward, we're trying to eliminate parking lot, parking on, perpendicular parking out onto the street is not very safe. So if I'm a pedestrian walking along the back of those cars, I gotta walk along 12 cars. There's no place to kind of, for a pedestrian to be safe partway across that, or we discourage that now. We, controlling access is more, like the same thing we did with Tim Hortons uptown and that type of thing, where you're trying to create widths of accesses. I mean, the parking is the parking. The parking's where the parking is. We're not gonna take the parking away if they change the use of the building. So that'll exist, that'll be grandfathered in and stay there as it is. But tomorrow, we wouldn't wanna open the block across the street and have full parking backing out onto Summer Street. It's just less safe.
Instead of prohibited, could we switch it to permitted with approval, or?
Yep.
I just would
Yeah.
hate to limit, prohibited is pretty, like, I'm a big believer that should be, what's that word, perpendicular parking in downtown Summerside. I think we eliminated a ton of parking over the years. Anyway, that's my belief, and I would hate for properties that might have parking restrictions to not be able to be developed because they're now not permitted to use perpendicular parking.
We do have further down on the slide, actually, we've got some recommendation that says, subject to municipal engineer approval, so that would kind of cover that concerns of saying, like, listen, we don't really want you to have perpendicular parking, but if we've done our studies and like the engineer says it's fine, then go for it.
Yeah, I just don't like that prohibited word,
Mhm,
seems pretty
mhm.
strong, so if we
Okay.
could ease that, that would at least make me feel a little better.
Any of these can always come to council for, and so we can always apply to council for change,
That was a parking, a number of parking space required, not where the parking was located, you know what I mean? So it was the number of spaces.
So we can soften the language of that, that's totally fine.
Yeah, you could just add language along, except where specifically designated or something like
Okay,
that. You
okay.
could designate,
Okay.
you could apply for a designation.
You bet. And then subsection 10.3, access design will, So these proposed amendments will allow for a little bit of wiggle room around property access, so that every development is a little bit different, kind of like what we were just talking about. These amendments will allow for us to accommodate those differences within reason. So yeah, like we can duplicate that language for the perpendicular parking. What is that? Almost done, guys. Page 82, this amendment is being recommended due to a recent application for an apartment building that had to come before council for decision due to 2 large variances, one of which was this regulation 10.9C2. This regulation isn't really tied to building code or anything and has very little value, we felt, so we're just recommending deleting it. Page 85 for subsection 10.13. So this recommended amendment is to restrict people living in the RVs on residential lots. So people are still allowed to store their RVs on their property. Enforcing the 30-day limit, so kind of harkening back to the comment that you made about 120 days. Enforcing that 30-day limit is nearly impossible. So removing it remains that if we receive a complaint, we'll be able to start enforcement immediately. Any comments, questions, concerns? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can store it. Yeah, they can store their property. But what that little section there that we're proposing deleting says is, like, if you've got family coming for a visit, they can stay there for 30 days. Realistically, if you've got someone coming for the weekend, nobody's going to complain about somebody using their camper on your property for the weekend, right? We do enforcement on complaint-based. So even if we take out that piece that says they're allowed to stay on a property for 30 days, people can stay up on a lot for a couple of days. Like, realistically speaking, like, it's not going to stop them from visiting family members using their RV for a couple of days to kind of camp on their family's lot. And again, like, if somebody comes in and complains, is like, yo, this person has been living in this RV for months, then we wouldn't basically have to start from zero, saying, like, okay, this is day 1 that we're marking this enforcement. We have to wait another 30 days to count that they're still there living in that RV, and then going through that enforcement process, it just takes a lot longer. Yeah.
Question on the commercial recreational vehicles, would that include a boat? I know of at least 2 instances. To me, it doesn't. When I read it, that wouldn't include a boat that you use for commercial purposes. I just know there's one that's parked on a front lawn frequently, and there's a few others.
I think if you check that definition, it might be in the definition.
But we can confirm that and send it around. Okay. Sweet. All right. Just a couple slides left. I believe in you guys. Page 89. So the amendments to the table under subsection 12.1 are being recommended to align with the building code. So under the building code, a patio or a deck that's less than 4.52 meters is a step. So we're just kind of saying, like, surrounding grade, that steps are allowed to encroach into yards, and anything larger than that has other requirements. Okay. And then page 98, the next change there under medium density residential. So this proposed amendment will allow manufactured homes that were legally existing prior to 1990 to be replaced, 1999, sorry, to be replaced. 1990. So it's consistent with our other regulations within the zoning bylaw. Additionally, this land use section directed the development officer to reference the apartment building standard for a nursing care facility development, but it didn't say under which zone. So it could be interpreted to mean that the development standards within the R4 district, which does list the nursing care facilities alongside the apartment development standards. So we're just recommending to delete that section and input nursing care facilities into the development standards table itself. So it's just a clarification piece. And then if you flip to page 125, oh, sure, sorry.
Again, that would be on those lots in that R3 zone. So they can put, currently under the R3 standards, you can't put a manufactured home there. But if they're replacing it with a newer one, we allow that to happen on those lots. Yeah. And it's written 1999 in one place and 1990 in another, so that's another correction just to be made.
And then on page 125, so just replacing that urban core district map, just because the boundaries in it they're not accurate with what the current zoning bylaw map shows. The second map on that page is what the proposed amendment is going to be. And finally, on page 149, you can see a brand new table. The zoning bylaw does require that we have restricted uses recorded. So this table just collects all of the restricted permits that have been issued over the years, identifies the PID, civic address, the permit number, issue date, the land use zone, and then what that restricted use is. So it's going to fulfill that regulation and make it easier to track where and what the restricted use permits are. That's it. You did it. You made it. I'm sure you're all wiped. If there's any lingering thoughts, questions, or comments, I can answer them to the best of my ability now, or Linda can help me. And if there's anything you felt like needed a bigger discussion, we can save it for a later date. If something pops up as you're digesting the presentation, you can email them to Erin and we'll compile them, including all of the kind of questions and comments that you gave us today. We'll ask that you keep your red line copy, so that we'll use it again for the readings of the bylaw, and we'll reference any changes that we've made for you. So is there anything else before we leave?
Can I just ask you who read that last one? So
For sure.
there was a manufactured home on this lot. It was removed.
Okay.
And then the person that owns the lot applied to put a fourplex on it, say. But so if they don't go through the fourplex, can they revert it back to a mobile home again?
I don't think so.
It no longer would fit existing prior to 19.
But if,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if they put a fourplex on that lot and then come back and say, we're gonna put a mini home back on it, yeah. I think we would say no, that it wasn't no longer lawfully existing, right, at that.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought it was like it hadn't been built. Okay, sorry. Okay. Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Megan. That was really valuable, and look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Thank you.
Excellent. We'll now move on to item 5B, which is the Dunsky Generation Report. We've got Director Goody here to present the report. As council may remember, we recently, I'm going to go maybe 4 weeks ago there, Greg, we had Dunsky staff present some summary findings from their report and public feedback. Director Goody is now going to walk us through a summary of what the full report says, and I think the full report is included in the package. Certainly encourage council over the coming weeks to read through all of it. There's always a lot to digest when we're looking at this, but really important to continue moving forward. So, Director Goody, we'll hand it over to you and take us away.
Sure. So there was a need identified for Summerside Electric at the beginning of this to look at a generation asset of investment and to increase our capacity and reliability of electricity in Summerside for its customers and community. So in that auspice, the scope of the report that's in the package with council was really to cover a bunch of items in it. So when you're reading the report, it's important to remember the scope of the study, which was to investigate the need and size of the Summerside Electric to meet its energy demands in electricity for the foreseeable future. So that future was arrived at 10 years to 2035 in the report, although there are some things that head out farther than that into 2045. But their recommendations as Dunsky Group only takes us to 2035 to cover the demands noted. The second item was to engage the public to make sure we had input from the public on what was important to them in Summerside Electric's path forward. What did they want to see? The other section was to investigate the availability of renewable fuels in the geographic area of Atlantic Canada and a little bit abroad, some into Newfoundland and some into Quebec, was the geographic area of distance where fuels could be easily logistically transferred or transported. The last one that came along with the study was expanding that fuel discussion into renewable generation, like we've been doing for decades here in Summerside by greening the grid with wind and battery storage mainly. They did look at solar as well, but that was until 2035, and they were investigated as well as part of the report. So out of that report, in summary, there's outcome summary, I would call, which is recommendation section. After you go through all the data and all the need discussions and the availability of fuel, which is not in the report in detail. It's in the section I added in under, it's called the modeling workshop details. We went through with staff and Dunsky they showed us what was the issues with fuels in the area, and that's an added to the report at the back. So the outcomes was they engaged the public and they had 3 highlighted priorities. There was a lot on the list, but the top 3 came out, which was keeping the lights on was important. Smart investment was important. And the third one was cutting carbon emissions was important to the community. So those were the 3 issues that Dunsky really hit hard in their report that you'll read. And it governed a lot of their recommendations going forward. And what were the outcomes? So the outcomes in the report you'll see is 15 megawatts of capacity were needed for liquid fuel. Now they say diesel in their report, and then a few words later with future renewable efficiencies. Like, and you'll see in the report as well, there's a biodiesel component to liquid fuel. There's a methanol, ethanol, and ammonia as well, which is a liquid fuel. So they're in there in the reports. They talk about their availability, their security, and delivery logistics. But they did arrive on diesel at the start for the infrastructure and availability and PEI, with the possibility of using biodiesel and FAME down the road to reduce carbon emissions. The other one they talked about was strengthening our New Brunswick tie to transmission, and that really was because of the cost of the energy in New Brunswick versus generating it from that local fuel. It's better cost effectiveness, as in smart investment, to get as much energy as we're allowed from New Brunswick at a much lower cost than we could generate locally. But the idea was we still had a near-term critical need of capacity locally because there's unavailability of that energy in New Brunswick at the same time. So they created a balance of suggestions. The next one they came into was 24 megawatts of more wind. And the 24 megawatts of more wind was to keep our existing 9 megawatts and add another 15 to that with West Cape to look at discussions of contract negotiations, because again, that was an opportunity for cheaper energy not to run the 15 megawatt diesel plant any more than we had to. The fourth option was a 10 megawatt, 40 megawatt hour, or a battery that would last for 10 megawatts for 4 hours at a time, and it's needed for new storage additions. That would help match the wind build-out, as well as other sources of energy that we could store and reuse later. And this is to meet Summerside Electric needs to 2035. Originally, there was an ask in 2018 for 15 from staff. It was tabled at the time, we went back for 15 now. Other documents out there suggested that Summerside Electric should have 30. So they decided 30 was for a 2045 horizon. They decided, Dunsky, to say a 10-year investment, a smarter investment for now, and then wait 5 years or more, and then make your next decision on what you want to do with capacity. You don't need to jump all the way over to 30 megawatts on day one. And you'll see that in some of their issues. The other issue to point out when you're reading the report is they are doing it all on normalized temperatures. So they're not factoring in extended cold snaps or extreme weather events like polar vortex for that need. That's in their report in several areas. And you'll see different numbers based on those. We had a long discussion, and they said it's not normal to take one data point for a need in the community for planning purposes. So they decided to exclude that. They did show the risk, but they recommended the capacity to meet basically the normalized temperatures and not the abnormal temperatures. And that's an important point to note out in the report. It's subtle in there, and then they do throw around some different numbers for that abnormal weather conditions in the report. So it's just mindful if you see different things in the report when you're reading it, the 15 megawatts is for normalized temperatures. And that's going back 20 years or so, normalized climate data. So some of the thumbs I want to bring important to, they don't come out in the report and state it like right there in a chart to see, but I didn't see in the report where they had an investment number or level of costs to go with their suggestions of recommendations. They have a chart in there that's so many dollars per kilowatt installed for these options. So in taking that chart and taking their numbers in the report, the 15 megawatt of capacity of liquid fuel would be about $40 million of investment for the community. Strengthening the New Brunswick tie, we estimated staff quickly it'd be about a $1.8 million a year adder to our operations budget. The 24 megawatts capacity and energy for new wind would be $63 million for an investment. The 10 megawatt, 40 megawatt hour battery storage, which we just built in Sunbank, is estimated at $27 million. So when you look at all the four options, it's 130.9 roughly million of investment that Summerside Electric will need to decide upon in the coming 5 years. Not right away. It'll be stepped in, and you'll have lots of time to figure that out as we go through. The next suggested next steps that I recommend to council is that staff needs to go away and look at all the options and come up with a stepped plan on how we go about meeting the needs that match timelines of our load growth and our need and our strengthening tie of New Brunswick, to put all the pieces together to figure out the steps of investment that would be needed, or at least recommended from staff as we see it, and then council will still have final decision and approval on that. That's basically where it is. It's a fairly technical report to read, but in summary, it's recognized a need of the community to have a reliable electric grid, and then it also recommends how it's possible to meet it with technologies that are current today and in the future with fuel security to run the generator once you have it, and then also to look at future energy needs with renewables and other storage options and how we can make sure that we keep not running those assets too many times or too long because it's expensive to run. So they did two things in the report, which is good, and I think they came across with a balanced approach for Summerside Electric. They are a green recommending company in general. So I think part of the reason why they restricted timeline was to reduce the amount of current availability of technology for PEI and surrounding area. And then it may be prudent, coming to the smart investment side, to say you do have you'll say the other term, which is a critical near-term need of Summerside Electric. And if you had more time to make the decision, you might have more time to be able to pick different technology as it matured and was more reliable, and the fuel was ready in Atlantic Canada. But at this stage of the decision point, they recommend it's not readily available to be secure enough and reliable enough to go on full renewable fuel options. So they decided to suggest a part diesel solution with others. And that's the reason of the report. That's what you'll see in there. We still have a lot of work to do as staff to take all these and come back with council. And really tonight's just to receive the report, digest it. It'll become public, the details of the report, I assume, in the package. And so public will have access for questions and answer period. And we leave it really at that for digesting the report. As you get comfortable with it over the next month, with maybe some coffee and some whatever you like to have for a snack to keep you awake, to read it and digest it. And if you have any questions, please reach out and go through JP, the CAO, to me, and we'll answer all questions you have. That's pretty well the report in summary. Any questions from anybody that might have seen something in the report that?
When, Director Greg, when you talk about, you know, like there's a phase-in of different steps, in your observation, in your opinion, from seeing the report from start to finish, and there's, you know, using the diesel, using the windmill, like different things, how do you see it for the city and council to reach that? Like, what would have to kick in first? What do we have to be really careful of?
I always look at it as a storyline for Summerside and its community. And Summerside's been an electric utility since 1920. And at the start, it was what the technology was available, which is, you know, liquid fuel options. And then as, you know, things progressed into interconnections and technology came along, Summerside has always been at the forefront of investing in diversity. So we've invested in wind, we've invested in solar, we've invested in battery storage, everything they're recommending. And now it's like a circle. So it comes around again and says, well, we have a plant that's aging, we have things that are going, and we understand also now that to have a secure grid, sometimes the wind doesn't always blow, sometimes the solar's not always shining. And we did some very Kleenex type math on how many solar farms would we need, how many wind farms would we need, and that's also in the report, in the modeling results, to go 100% green. And you're talking, I think it was 80 megawatts of wind and 150 megawatts of solar and so much of storage. And it was just such a large number, like you're into the 500 million to $1 billion. I mean, that's just unattainable for ratepayers in the community. So I think this tells a balanced report. A balanced approach is a good report and is a good approach. I think the next thing staff needs to do is come back with a detailed plan, because with these large investments, you need a tight capital expenditure expectation. You need a proper preliminary design on what you're going to do. You need a proper information on the fuel system that you can get to your doorstep to generate that power. And finally, you need financial impact from finance department and staffing requirements all set together in a bigger plan. I don't think you can do that all in one day. So I think we need some time to generate that concept. To talk of your timeline, Dunsky does talk about a timeline in their report, and they give it staged years of when they believe it can be. They looked at the need in those years and then looked what could fill those needs. So it's a staged approach. The very first one Dunsky has recommended is a diesel, and then very shortly after a wind contract of some type to go along with the diesel, or the liquid fuel I like to call it, because we actually, staff went out and talked to Island Petroleum, people we do business with the city, and we asked them what their logistics were for diesel fuel. We asked them, do they support any ethanol in the region? Do they have any access to biodiesel or FAME? And the answers were there's no market in PEI currently for those systems. There's some ethanol, and there's some that can't take ethanol with the E10 type blending in diesel. So we talked to them initially, and one thing we did find out through it though is that our current aging assets, and this is important to note, it's not in this report, I think it may talk about it, but there's efficiencies between diesel plants from 1980s to diesel plants of today. And initially it looks like they use about 33% less fuel to create the same amount of electricity today. So that means less emissions when you're running it, just from efficiency of technology. So when we run our older engines, obviously we're running 33% more fuel, and that means dirtier emissions. So there's some things that staff have to balance and have better numbers on those when we come back to council on what's important for how do we cut carbon, how do we keep the lights on, and how do we do a smart investment? Because those really are the three keys, and I think the public had it spot on when they put those as the three top priorities.
Do you see, just a small part B, so the 3 points that we made, keeping the lights on, strengthening,
Smart investment
smart investments.
and cutting carbon emissions.
But you also said about strengthening our ties in New Brunswick.
Yeah, that came from, sorry.
No, but that would be pretty important too, with what we have this
Yeah, so, and a very important part of this project that's being, or investment, is that the separation between capacity needs and energy needs. So the best way I can say it is that it's like an option call that Summerside has with New Brunswick. So we can take up to 30 megawatts of energy every hour that we can. We own that transmission. But we only pay them for, say, 15 megawatts of capacity because we have a 15 megawatt plant in Summerside. So we save all that cost from paying capacity costs while we can still access the energy because New Brunswick has an option call to say they have certain conditions where they say we can't give you energy. So we start up the plant and operations and run that energy locally. The difference is that that option call has only been called on upon, half a dozen times a year or less. So it's very advantageous to own capacity and have an energy option call. It's cost effective. It's I would say a smart investment. And it doesn't impact environmentally as hard as people would think because you own a diesel generator or liquid fuel generator. Another easy example comes to mind is when you have a generator at home to power your house. Fiona hits, great, you use your generator and you're happy. And after Fiona left, the generator goes in storage and it doesn't get used again until the next event. And that's what we're trying to do with this. Yeah.
I don't see any other questions. As I said, I'd certainly recommend to council to review and read this and ask any questions as they come up. And then I'm sure we'll be back here again as a variety of pieces of the puzzle start coming together. The only thing I would just add, Director Goody, to also look at in terms of cost and investment, but also having consideration for what the business case is for those investments. And I know you would. But where essentially the utility is operates as a business that we run here, so we want to make sure that we have the business case for the investment over the lifespan of the assets we're investing in. And I can ask you another time about. But I'm sure there'll be questions about that, right? I find it difficult with the report a little bit on the scope of, on the 10-year scope, but that makes it very difficult to build in the lifetime asset of a diesel generator into your business case, right? But look forward to your continued work and the team's work and coming back here to council and working our way through what the options are and what the best options are for the city.
All right, well, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions or reports, like you said.
Thanks, I know. Great, so we move on to item 6, committee of the whole discussion items. We have 2 here today. And I thought I'd just take this quick moment before we jump into them as well. Just, I'm starting to look at the longer term calendar here. Council, we're wrapping up summer of 2025. in terms of, there's a lot on the go, as we saw through all of the committee work and some other really big files, lots of things happening. I just sort of would flag for if we're thinking about future committee of the whole discussion items that would result in policy changes in work, to start just giving consideration to the fact that all the work that is currently being done, just the internal capacity and then also the timing. So really to develop a policy from start to finish can take upwards of a couple of years, as a lot of the ones that we're working on here today. So I just again ask folks to keep that in mind and temper expectations as that stuff moves forward. There may be really valuable things to bring forward through committee of the whole that might be really valuable policy options that we want to discuss as a council, and the council may want to wish to adopt or explore. But again, the reality of getting those completed within 12 months is, as each month that passes, that becomes harder and harder to get that completed before that cycle is complete. So I just wanted to flag that, as it was something we were discussing earlier today. Councillor Trenholm, removing widening Confederation Trail gates. I hand it over to you.
Sure, no, thank you. Yeah, this is, I guess, been on my radar both as a councillor, but also as just a regular person, I guess, for quite a while. Yeah, so essentially the Confederation Trail have gates. They're not all throughout the city on the trail. Just going by memory, but I think there may be 16, maybe there's 16 gates that are removed. Maybe there's 11 gates anyway. There's some gates that are removed and some that are there in the city on the trail. And the challenge, and it's causing both injury and concern, because if you're looking at, right now the city has tri-shaws, which are a bicycle, I guess, that is at the manor and at the community connections that holds two people in the front, and the whole idea is they can provide the community experience of getting out there, and they can't fit through the gates. If you watch somebody on a mobility scooter, they can't get through the gates. I know there's been a resident share a concern that he smashed into the gates, which are metal gates. They don't move when you hit them, and showed me the cuts and bruising on him. And speaking of a person who bicycles with a group of children every day, I can tell you almost every week or every second week, someone's doing an endo into the gates. And as a child whose hands are on the handlebars, the gates are the perfect height, so they jam the gate and the fingers and hands into the gate. And then it's just an ongoing risk. And so I guess in terms of that, I know I've brought it to council in different shapes and forms and trying to get some sense of it. I know our CIO has worked and I think has a little bit of update too to provide. But in terms of and I'll just recognize as well, I'll mention Dan Steele. He's an individual who has died, but he's been an advocate. He has Parkinson's, and he spoke passionately about when you lose the ability to drive a car, the bicycle for him was his alternative form of transportation. And the Confederation Trail is much safer than, let's say, alongside of the roads. And so being able to go on the trail with the gates was an impediment for him. Sorry, it's a challenge for him to navigate, and with Parkinson's and it's some shaking and hitting it, and hitting the gate's a challenge. So from an accessibility point of view, from that inclusion lens, as well as from an injury lens, I know I've asked staff to inquire about the gates are placed as such, and so either making them wider or somehow alternating them so there's more space for different types of forms of active transportation, or people using a bicycle or such, or children, so they can safely navigate. So I think maybe JP has a little, maybe more update on that.
Yeah, so following the initial discussion in the spring, I believe, Councillor, I instructed staff to go ahead and open the gates, and assumed all were operating as per normal. They were opened. You actually notified us that they were in fact back to normal closed status. So we sent staff back out to reopen them and advise the province once again that we wanted them left open. I've shared some communication with you with regards to the stance that the province has from a safety perspective on The gates being a preventative measure for people running through intersections without being notified that there's an intersection coming. There was some openness in the communication we had with them about updating their policies and procedures on the gates within the city. We haven't really had much communication on the file since that email exchange late last week. So we'll continue to work through that process and see if there's a willingness. They did indicate that they were going to update their policies in the near future, and that our feedback would be taken into consideration. But the trails do fall under the provincial regulation and ownership of the trails, so unfortunately we don't have authority to open them ourselves without their approval.
Yeah, so I guess, and just to follow up, I know that there was a Confederation Trail consultation, public consultation, if we all remember. I know that was the time of they were looking at the ATVs being on the trail. That kind of was the big ticket item, right? So there's a public document that, and as they've listed as that as one of their goals, to look at widening the gates and trying to figure out. So as when our CIO mentioned that, I said, okay, I did a little bit of research. So does seem to be some movement there. In my own head, I look at that basically from a liability point of view, the streets have a shoulder, and there's intersections, and it's just basically another intersection that you have to navigate. It's the responsibility of the person who's navigating the intersection to understand that that's an intersection. It's like a four-way stop, so you're not going to go through haphazardly. And I think too, there's certainly a precedent set in the city where there's a number of gates. There's more gates that are removed that we have within the city on the Confederation Trail. So I think understanding how that got to be and what standard that is would make sense. How can we also approach and talk to the province? Because I can guarantee you that when you can see people access through the gates that are open, the experience is so much more pleasant and so much more safe than being tied up in a kind of an inchworm effect, or seeing people not able to access the gates. So, but maybe some continued dialogue, JP, between you and CIO, and but I know there's some user groups as well that they would probably also like to be involved in that review. So I could reach out to those user groups and say, this is an opportunity for you to have your opinion on the gates, and likewise, so it's just not one individual, or it's not the city of Summerside, it's just some user groups. So that's where I'll go from here, I think. If there are any other comments, feel free to ask or say.
No, there doesn't seem to be any other comments. It sounds like staff's working with the province, and perhaps with the other user groups can contact the province directly. City of Summerside would be a little bit unique from the Confederation Trail because they don't permit snowmobile use through the city on the trail in the wintertime, but certainly have cycled through those gates myself and seen people actually not, a lot of people get off their bike and walk it through. Yep, and no reason why I can't reach out to provincial MLAs too in the city if they have enough pressure on them. Maybe they can raise those concerns with them, that they can address it. That's great. Okay, thank you, Councillor Trenholm. Next, Councillor Cameron, we're taking right along the employee personal use of city assets discussion.
Perfect, thank you, Your Worship. Just recently was reading the policy for employee personal use of city-owned assets, which is very outdated from 1996, has references to things like floppy disks that no one uses anymore. And through reading it, I just found that there is very, very little criteria as to what would be appropriate use of an asset. Mostly just says, if someone says you can do it, you can do it. As council, we use taxpayers' dollars for these assets, and I think that there should be criteria put in place. Now, I do know that through discussion with CIO that it has been, the preliminary look at has been started with our new policy writer to update this. I just think that when it is updated, we as council should be definitely looking at criteria, not just kind of a vague, yeah, if it's not being used, you can use it. There needs to be an appropriate use of city assets as well. Any further comments? That makes a lot of sense, Councillor Cameron, and good, and
was made aware too, it's part of, as you said, the list of policies under review. It may be helpful with this one and maybe with some others for Lindsay and staff to bring some of those policies to council at the earlier stage before getting too far into them, to get some feedback, even similar to what Megan presented here today. And that could certainly be the lead-off one, because it's one we've talked about before. And then it would, instead of having to get some feedback at the front end, and be able to then sculpt whatever work is underway. Great, okay, so we'll put that on our list, and monday.com. There's a lot of stuff on there, but it's great. Great, CAO updates, I don't see anything on here, and with that, as long as everybody's good, we'll adjourn the open public portion of our meeting. We have 2 brief items in camera, so they are listed on the agenda, and we will close the doors and close off the cameras, and I'll adjourn our main meeting here, and hope everyone is joining us. Has a wonderful night. Thanks.